How are we doing, everyone? Hope you're all well. Mr. Boulder here, and I'm back today with the start of a small series of videos on the channel when bands changed in the 90s. Now, as we all know, back in the 1990s, things were very different with their music compared to the 80s. What I mean by that is, of course, grunge and alternative music come along and pretty much wiped out the whole glam metal and hard rock scene. And also the thrash bands changed up their styles, and even the death metal bands changed up some of their styles. So episode 2, I'll be talking about the thrash metal bands changing things up in the 90s, and episode 3, I'll be talking about death metal, about when they changed to a more of a different style in the way that they played. So 7 albums to talk about from hair metal and hard rock bands for when they changed up their sound. Going to get started with an album I showed not too long ago on the channel. I only had this about 6 months. And here's Warrant and Ultraphobic, which came out in 1995. We've got a couple of lineup changes here. Still 3 guys from the original lineup. So Warrant's Ultraphobic, for me, isn't a huge step away from the sound that they're known of, but there's definitely some more alternative and grunge influences in here. They've probably tuned down slightly. But this is a really good album. I think it's underrated and definitely flies under the radar. You've still got Janie Lane on board, so obviously the vocals are very, very good. The songwriting's fantastic. Janie, I think, is an underrated songwriter. Great vocalist. Died way too young, of course. And there's some really good stuff on this. I mean, the first track, Undertow, is absolutely superb. Very catchy, very strong chorus. Great vocals from Janie. One of my favourite songs on the entire album, the first one. It's really, really good. Such a strong, catchy chorus. You've got Followed, which is track 2. Again, really, really good stuff. Family Picnic is decent. Crawl Space, I like the intro riff to that. Again, great vocals from Janie. It's very catchy in the chorus. Live Inside You is a great track. Title track, Ultraphobic, finishes with a song called Stronger Now, which basically just sounds like a power ballad from back in the day, although it's stripped down to just the acoustic guitar and Janie's vocals. This is a really good album, and I wish I picked it up much earlier. Again, Janie sounding fantastic, great songwriter, great vocals, some great guitar work across this. The drums are good as well. Warrant's Ultraphobic from 1995 is a good album. I like this one a lot. Let's go on to something else now. Album number 2. And here's Vince Neil's Carved in Stone from 1995. So Vince Neil put out Exposed, his first album, in 1993. And you'd never guess he put it out in 1993 because it sounds like a glam metal album that could have come out in 1987. That's a really good album, which is more than can be said for this. So Vince was definitely struggling to keep up with the change in the styles by the mid-90s. This is not a good album, and I've listened to this quite a few times, tried to get into it, and I just can't. It's not all bad. There's one really good song on this, and there's a couple of songs that are okay, but most of this is not great at all. I mean, the first song, and excuse me because this writing is not easy to read on the back of this CD case. Breaking in the Gun. They're using a drum machine on this. God knows why, when there's so many sort of session musician drums that you could have used. There's lots of old school hip hop style record scratching on this. I have a problem with neither of those things. But it sounds like to me they've just thrown everything at the wall and see what sticks on this track. There's some decent riffing in it, but overall the song just sounds a complete mess. Just loads and loads of ideas thrown together, and it's not good. It's not a good start to this album at all. Track 2, though, The Crawl, is much better, but still not great. Black Promises, track 4, is actually quite good. Track 5 is called Skylar's Song, which is about Vince's daughter who sadly passed away only about a month before this album came out. It's a really well-written song, really beautiful song actually, some great melodies. Vince's voice is fantastic. Very sad listening to it now, really. The guitar solo is great, and just a very, very good song. It's a shame the rest of the album's not as good as this song was. It would be a better album for it. It's a really good tune. But nothing else on this album really grabs me much at all. Waiting on the Fall is okay. But that's it. This is not a good album at all. It's hard to get through. Vince struggling to keep up with the times. And this is not a good album. Vince Neil's Carved in Stone there from 1995. Definitely a downgrade after his excellent 1993 album Exposed. Speaking of 1993, and here's Poison's Native Tongue, which came out in February 1993. Now, what we have here is a massive upgrade in guitar player quality. Now, I'm not hating on CC DeVille. I like his guitar playing. I think he gets shit on unfairly, actually. But there's no denying it. Richie Kotzen's a big upgrade with regard to the guitar playing quality on this. Richie also providing some excellent backing vocals. He had a lot of creative control on this album, this being his first album, which kind of surprises me. But it doesn't suffer for it. This is a much more mature sounding album from Poison, very much ditching the glam in favour of some heavy blues rock influence. And I think this album's underrated. Definitely flies under the radar. There's some really good stuff on this. Richie being on it, for me, also helps the rest of the guys in the band definitely up their game. Bret Michaels sounding really, really good on the vocals. Bob Weedle's bass playing is good. And for me, Ricky Rocket's drums are the best they've ever sounded. Some of the fills that he plays on Look What the Cat Dragged In, their multi-million selling debut album, are bloody awful. But here, he's definitely stepped up for his game. The drums sound fantastic and he plays really well. And it's a very good album with some really, really good songs on it. And it's underrated, I think. The first track, Native Tongue, starts off with a real kind of tribal sounding drum intro, which sounds good. I like the vocals and the lyrics in that tune. The Scream, that's the first proper song. Really, really good stuff. The Native Tongue's the intro, sorry. Stands, track 3, which is the single. It sounds fantastic. Gospel choir in there. A great song with great chorus. I think there's some mandolin in this as well. Just a brilliant song. Really, really great chorus. Very strong, catchy stuff. Then you've got Body Talk, which is another single. Another track with a great chorus. Stay Alive is okay, not so fussed by that. Then you get to track 5, which is Until We Suffer Some Fire and Ice. Now, for me, when it comes to 80s hair bands, Poison did not do the best ballads until this song, because this is fantastic. Excellent chorus, great guitar playing throughout. Just a fantastic ballad, really, really good. Bret Michaels just sounds great with the vocals. Bring It Home is another great track. Ain't That the Truth is another great song. Theory of the Soul. Blind Faith is an excellent song. I love the chorus in that. Really, really strong. Bastard Son of 1,000 Blues ends this album. Really good stuff. Some excellent backing vocals from Richie, backing up what Bret Michaels is singing. Everyone's on top of their game. An underrated album. Excellent blues rock from Poison. Definitely different from what they did before, but not going full on grunge. Definitely going down the bluesy route. And I think that's really good. Poison's Native Tongue from 1993 is an excellent album. Up next to 1995 now, and here's Extreme, and they're waiting for the Punchline album. Self-produced by Nuno Bettencourt with Bob St. John executive producing. This one's a bit of a mixed bag for me. There's some stuff in this that is really good, but there's a lot of stuff that I just don't really care for at all. You've got Mike Mangini on the drums, the only album that he made with Extreme. He was in Annihilator before this, and of course has done a long stint in Dream Theater since. And he's been in loads of other stuff as well. Not a bad album by any stretch of imagination, but it's not brilliant at the same time. I mean, there's some stuff in this that I really love. Cynical track 2 is amazing. I love the vocals in that, and there's some amazing guitar playing from Nuno Bettencourt. I mean, of course, across the whole album, but particularly on that tune. Hit Today, that was a single. That's a really, really great track. Really strong chorus, very catchy. Great vocals from Gary. Midnight Express, Leave Me Alone is decent. Shadow Boxing. But there's some of the other songs, they're not terrible, but they're just kind of plod along at a sort of slow to mid pace with some choruses that are not very strong for me, just kind of repeating the same line over and over again. Some of the songs just do not grab me on this at all. And even though I can listen to the whole album, some of the songs I could quite easily bin off and it would be better for it. Pat Badger's bass still sounds great as always. Gary and Nuno's lead and backing vocals harmonise together, always sound fantastic. Nuno's playing is great. Great vocals from Gary. But yeah, some of the songs just kind of miss the mark for me. Not a terrible album, but there's definitely room for improvement here, and there's a strong grunge influence on this one. Definitely sounds nothing like 1990s massive selling Pornography. It's an okay album, but the 3 that come before it are definitely better. It has to be said. Up next, we had a guitar player upgrade for Poison on their mid-90s album, and here we have a massive upgrade in terms of vocals on this Mötley Crüe, their self-titled album from 1994, the only one that features John Corabi on vocals. I'm not hating on Vince because I love his vocals on the earlier Crüe albums, but there's no doubt about it, John Corabi is a better vocalist, and this is an absolutely fantastic album, very much underrated, very much ignored by a lot of Crüe fans, purely because Vince isn't on it. If you've never really listened to this album, then I urge you strongly to clear your mind and give it a chance, because you will be rewarded. This is a fantastic album. A lot of people say this is like their grunge album, but for me, it's much heavier than grunge. This is more like a metal album. Corabi is also playing guitar, so you've got two guitars now, so that thickens up the sound nicely. Bob Rock's production's amazing. The drums on this album sound fantastic. Tommy Lee putting in a really, really strong shift. He sounds fantastic on this as well. And it's an album with really, really well-written songs, and it's just fantastic. I love it, and I'd love to get on vinyl, but it's so hard to come by. But so many great tunes on this. Starts off with Power to the Music, which is a great tune. Uncle Jack, fantastic song, really strong chorus, great vocals from Corabi. Hooligan's Holiday, that was a single. Misunderstood, another single, great tune, really, really good lyrics in it. I like it a lot. Love Shine, which is a song which is just literally really the acoustic guitar and John's vocals. Poison Apples, great drumming in that. Tommy sounded fantastic. Hammered, that's another great track that I really like a lot. Welcome to the Numb, fantastic stuff. Smoke the Sky, the heaviest Mötley Crüe song. Brilliant, brilliant guitar riffs and excellent vocals from Corabi. And then he starts to tail off a little bit with the last two tracks, which are dropping like flies, which is okay. I don't mind that one. Drift Away, the last track. Not too fussed by that, but on the whole, this is a fantastic album, completely underrated and definitely flies under the radar. Mötley Crüe, self-titled from 1994. Like I say, if you haven't listened to it just because Vince isn't on it, clear your mind, go into it with an open mind, listen to it again, and because it's an excellent album and definitely needs more love, and definitely shouldn't be ignored like it is by a lot of people. The last CD to show. And here's Dokken with Dysfunctional from 1995, produced by Michael Wagner, who produced all the Accept albums in the 80s. And he also produced a lot of the big-selling Dokken albums from the mid-80s. On the Lock and Key springs to mind. This is a decent album. It's not brilliant, but I used to really dislike it. But it's grown on me, but it's no classic, no doubt about it. I'm not saying that you should go out and hear this if you've never heard it, because it's certainly not essential. But it's definitely better than I used to think it was. This is the reunited original lineup with George Lynch back in the band. So, of course, the guitar playing's fantastic. George is absolutely amazing. Mick Brown on the drums, Jeff Wilson on the bass, and providing the excellent backing vocals, as always. He's still plying his trade in Foreigner these days. And Don Dokken on the vocals, with his vocals sounding really good, unlike these days where they're not that great at all. It's an okay album, though. Inside Looking Out, the first track, is really, really good. Some really nice harmonised vocals in the chorus, which make the chorus really stand out. It's a great track. Too High to Fly, track 4 is excellent. Great guitar work from George, as always. Shadows of Life is pretty good. Track 10, What Price I like. Track 11, From the Beginning, is decent. But there's also some stuff in this that really sort of passes me by and doesn't stick out in the memory. There's some nice acoustic moments, to be fair, and this acoustic guitar on this album sounds really, really good. A mixed bag, though. Some good songs on it, but some completely forgettable stuff, which means Dokken's Dysfunctional, for me, is an album that is not as bad as I used to think it was, but it's no classic by any stretch of imagination. But there is some good stuff to be found, it has to be said. That's Dokken's Dysfunctional from 1995. A bit like the Warrant album, you know, there's definitely a nod to their old school sound, but they're taking some definite influences from the grunge and alternative scene, no doubt about it. And the last album to talk about today, which came out in 1996, the only one I got on vinyl, is Def Leppard's Slang. Now, in 1992, Def Leppard put out Adrenalize and were basically starting as they were previously going on. Adrenalize just sounds like a 1980s hard rock album that came out in 92 and still sold really, really well. By the time I got to 96, though, they were forcibly feeling the pressure to change up their style and go with a more alternative sound album. So they came out with Slang in 1996, and This is not a good album. It has to be said. I mean, a lot of people hate on Adrenalize, but believe me, Adrenalize is way better than this. It's not all bad, but there's a lot of bad stuff on this. So you've got a more sort of realistic drum sound on this album. And they've mixed things up with adding some traditional, I think there's like some sitar on there, so some traditional Indian instruments on there. It's got its moments, but some of it is really, really bad. It's got to be said. I mean, track 1, Truth, very uninspiring. For me, with an album, you should be coming out of the gates with one of your best tracks. And Truth is not that. It's got to be said. Turn to Dust, track 2 is completely forgettable. Don't care for that song at all. Title track 3, Slang, is really good. It sounds a little bit more like the old school Leppard. Maybe that's why I like it. The chorus is very strong. Some silly lyrics in it though. All I Want Is Everything, track 4, is bloody awful. Absolute shit, that song. Take it off. I don't ever need to hear it again. It's not good at all. Track 5, Work It Out, is a song I really used to dislike, but it's definitely grown on me. Not a banger by any stretch of imagination, but it's not bad at all. Then you got the last song on track 8 called Breathe a Sigh, which sounds like the worst dreary power ballad shit that not even a manufactured pop band would want to put out. It's really, really bad. It can get in the fucking bin. It's such a bad song. And side B is pretty much more of the same. Deliver Me is an average song. Gift of Flesh is actually really good. It's probably because it's more up tempo. It's got a strong chorus. Joe Elliott sounding really good. Blood Runners Cold, a very dull ballad. Where Does Love Go When It Dies, another piss poor dull ballad. Ends with Pearl of Euphoria, a shit ending to a shit album. I mean, you've still got the harmonised backing vocals that you associate with Leppard, which still sound nice, but it's just fucking wank, basically. Such a piss poor album. I like it a little bit more than I used to, but not by a lot. On the whole, it's bad. Way too many dreary ballads that just completely ruin the flow of the album. And not that great, it's got to be said. So there we go. That's my opinion on these albums released in the 1990s by the hard rock and glam metal bands back in the day. And while we're here, let's do a quick album ranking of all these albums, shall we? So, coming in at 7th place for me is Vince Neil's Carved in Stone from 1995. One really decent song, a couple of okay tracks, but the rest of it forgetful, uninspiring, and just not very good, basically. Number 6, Def Leppard Slang. Way too many shitty ballads. Really, really bad ballads, actually, and not enough highlights. That's number 6. Number 5, let's go with Dokken's Dysfunctional. Some really good moments, and some moments that just don't stick out in the memory. Like it more than I used to, but still not great by any stretch of the imagination. Number 4, Extreme. Waiting for the punchline. Once again, just on the Dokken album, some really, really good moments, but a lot of average stuff as well. Number 3, Warrant's Ultraphobic. Very underrated, I think. I wish I picked this up earlier. Undertow, first track, absolutely superb. Brilliant stuff on that one. Number 2, Poison's Native Tongue. Really, really good blues rock album. Very much underrated. Again, this needs a vinyl reissue because it's really expensive to get hold of. I really like this one. Definitely deserves more recognition. But easily the best out of this lot for me, no doubt about it, is Mötley Crüe's Mötley Crüe from 1994. Ignored by a lot of the fans, and they're missing out because it's excellent stuff. Great tracks like Smoke the Sky, Poison Apples, Uncle Jack, Welcome to the Numb, etc., etc. Again, that needs a vinyl reissue. Phenomenal stuff. For me, Mötley Crüe fared the storm the best back in the 90s. Not that you would know, though, because this sunk without trace after release, which is a shame for me. But there we go. Mötley Crüe's Mötley Crüe from 1994 is my favourite album from these glam metal hard rock bands that changed up their style in the 90s. Underrated album. Excellent stuff. Right, guys. So there we go. That's it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed this video. As per usual, get in the comments section. Let me know what you think about these albums if you're familiar with them. I'll be back next week with part 2, talking about the thrash metal bands changing up their style in the early 1990s. So, as per usual, please get in touch, leave me a comment. And thanks for watching as always. It's very much appreciated. I'm going to have a quick sip of coffee. And I'll see you next week. Take care. Cheers, and I'll see you later.